Welcome back, curious spacefarers of the galaxy. We were waiting for you. Since the inception, the Sith Order has had a vested interest in their homeworld of Korriban. This was of course the birthplace of the Sith themselves, both in the ways of the Sith pure-blooded race, and when the Dark Jedi landed after the Second Great Schism to establish a brand new order. They of course would lose control over their ancestral homeworld following the Great Hyperspace War, when Naga Sadow would fail in his mission to take over the Republic, and in turn resulted in the Sith Empire being destroyed. Korriban would then change hands several times between the Republic and Sith for many thousands of years afterwards, until finally, the Rule of Two was established, and we don't really hear anything about the precious Sith homeworld again. This is an exceptionally interesting fact considering that Darth Sidious made a hobby of his out of collecting Sith memorabilia. So why did he and Darth Vader just abandon Korriban altogether? Why is it that we don't hear them trying to go back to their homeworld and set up an operation there? Well, my friends, we intend on answering this question today, as we have found a couple of sources to suggest that there is more to this than meets the eye. Our first reason actually comes from all the way back in the days of Darth Bane in the Brotherhood of Darkness, in just the years prior to the creation of the Rule of Two. During this time, the Brotherhood of Darkness had established a base as well as an academy on Korriban, which was specifically meant to cultivate Sith Lords. This was the exact academy that Darth Bane would attend in the year's training in the Force. When he was a student towards the end of his studies, Bane had desired to venture into the Valley of the Dark Lords and try to find answers to the real meanings of the Sith homeworld amongst the other dead lords, as well as discover what it truly meant to be a Dark Lord. The Sith Masters of the Academy tried to discourage this, however, not only because delving into the ancient Sith might ruin Bane from the Brotherhood's ideology, but they had warned him that the Jedi had plundered the tombs of the ancients and stolen all of the dark side knowledge and artifacts that laid there. According to the Sith Masters, the Valley of the Dark Lords was nothing but a hollow shell of its former dark glory. Bane, however, refused to accept this and decided to go on his own adventures, only to be disappointed to find out that his Sith Masters had indeed been correct. Bane said that he sensed that the Valley of the Dark Lords only held a distant echo of the dark side, that the power that was once there had long been buried in the sands of time of the planet. The dark side was very strong on Korriban, to be sure. The Masters even said that it ran through the planet like a lifeblood. However, this was mostly because of the people that continued to practice the dark arts on the world, and all of the dark side touched creatures that still roamed there, not due to the planet itself. A massive blow to the ancient Sith lineage. Whenever the Brotherhood of Darkness was destroyed during the 7th Battle of Ruusan, Darth Bane never bothered to go back to Korriban, and just sort of left it there to rot, the sands of time continuing to take its toll. Who can hardly blame Bane though? An examination of his history on the planet would make it understandable that he had likely left a bad taste in the Sith's mouth, not to mention that Bane was not a sentimental man at all. If something or someone no longer held use to him, it was of no value any longer. This was the same attitude that he had for the homeworld of the Sith and Korriban. It was a distant memory of the dark side, and not to mention, a far too obvious hiding place. So what does this have to do with Vader and Sidious and the continuation of the Rule of Two? It was known for a long while amongst the Rule of Two generation of Sith that Korriban was more or less useless. One could take and go out on a large excavation if they so wanted to do so, especially considering Palpatine's resources following the rise of the Empire. However, these resources needed to go to another place altogether, as the primary goal of the Empire was the Death Star. No funding would go to any frivolous expenditures. The Empire cut costs everywhere, even at the expense of its own citizens most of the time. The military was the objective, so it wasn't like an archaeological dig on a forgotten planet was anywhere near the top of the list of priorities for that time. Palpatine now had access to a plethora of dark-side-rich worlds from which to spend his time, and if anything, his attention was mainly on the world of Dathomir. However, this wasn't the only thing keeping him from the Sith ancestral homeworld. It is actually quite possible that Sidious was somewhat spooked by it. But how do we know this? Well, in the Book of the Sith, we learn that Sidious once took a trip to Korriban, specifically to find ancient Sith spirits, in order to commune with them and learn their ancient secrets. He tells us this when he comments on Plagueis' skepticism that Sith spirits even existed in the first place. In the book, Sidious says this: "The spirits of Korriban are quite real. Indeed, on one occasion, they nearly killed me, but I agree with my master in this observation. The dead Dark Lords are evasive in their speech and are ultimately treacherous beings. What Sidious is saying here was that even if you could find a Sith spirit, it was a dangerous and nearly fruitless endeavor. It was unlikely that they would yield to you any real information, and they could even possibly kill one of the greatest dark side wielders in all of the galaxy. Even Sidious, one of the most quintessential Sith in galactic history, was not privy to their knowledge. If any Sith Lord were to be worthy of the ancient secrets, it would be Sidious. And yet we know that one time when Sidious was mocked by the spirits of the Dark Lord, such as Mark Aragnos, meaning that the standards of these ancient Sith Lords were impossibly high, and, again, even Sidious was not deemed worthy of them. Sidious unfortunately doesn't go into any great detail about what happened on his visit to Korriban as well as with the spirits, but just that his very life was in danger and that he did indeed nearly die. I think it is a reasonable assumption to make from this statement that the Dark Lords were treacherous and that Korriban was not only a dead planet, but a haunted planet. What good would it be for the Empire to try and set up any sort of facility there if the mischievous Sith spirits were constantly interfering with its progress, driving the workers mad and sabotaging the equipment? Endless time and money would be sunk into the project in service of a goal that Sidious wasn't even sure existed anymore. With that said, were there possibly some important and powerful artifacts buried deep within the sand dunes of this ancient world? Perhaps, but it was far from definitive. Without the sure certainty of something hidden there with great power, there was just no sense in Sidious trying to endure the hauntings of the Sith ghosts, as well as risking his own life and resources. On the other hand, Darth Vader had absolutely no interest in chasing ghosts whatsoever. There are theories around to suggest that Vader might have visited Korriban at one point, but we know that he hadn't held a lot of interest for ancient Sith secrets unless they could provide a solution to an immediate problem. Chasing artifacts was his master's game, though we do know that the ancient Sith spirits in the Grand Tombs did have a throne fashioned for Darth Vader. An interesting piece of Star Wars lore. Perhaps they were even mocking Vader for what he could have become. Sidious would even discover this fact after his resurrection following the destruction of the Empire in Legends continuity. In the comic book titled Empire's End, we can see Sidious's frustration with the spirits of Korriban on full display, when he desired to have healing for his damaged clone body, only to be refused and mocked by the spirits a second time. In conclusion, although the world permeated with the dark side, the Valley of the Dark Lords held nothing of use to any Sith trying to gain knowledge from the ancient tombs. Just old traps and curses with no reward lied in wait for anyone desperate enough to cross it. Beyond this, Sith spirits were impossible to reason with, and for all of this, Sidious and Vader abandoned Korriban and never really tried to bother with it during their tenure in the Empire. But my friends, I do hope you enjoyed this video and like it when we break down some of the more esoteric concepts of Star Wars lore. With that said, are there any other planets that you would like to see explored? If so, please comment them down below, as we would love to construct a holocron about them. Until then, acolytes and spacefarers, may the Force be with you, and I hope that you have a great day.